Good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning here in Osaka. It is what time for you?
8:27 p.m.
Good enough. So I've got my coffee.
Yes, good time.
You got a beer. You got a beer.
No, I've got coffee as well.
Keep yourself rolling. Actually, you haven't been feeling well.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming back and doing the show again, regardless of
yeah.
the show.
No, I do apologise. Apologise for my throat and my general health this episode, but here I am, ready.
The show must go on. We appreciate it. All right. So, a couple things going on right away. You've been doing some soldering, you and your lovely missus, who does
Yeah,
fantastic work, I gotta say. Some SMD soldering. So we're gonna take a look at that this episode, as well
yeah.
as I'm gonna do a conversation about the conformal coating. Everybody always asks me, why would you do such a thing? You paint all your boards. It makes it more difficult to rework if there's something going on. But I'll tell you and show you why in this episode. So welcome back to Noodling on Wires with Jason Robot Dog on Instagram, and
Gareth Plink and Plonk on Instagram.
love it. You still have trouble saying that in public. It
Oh,
looked so great when you made the account, huh?
it was a decision I made at the time. It was a long time ago,
Sure.
and who would have thought that I'm having to say it in public?
So that's okay. I got to tell you, I live online. I think when I made my first AOL account in 1990, yeah, 90,
Yeah,
about. I couldn't decide what to actually call. Needed a handle, of course. Couldn't
yeah,
decide,
sure.
and so I borrowed a character from a cartoon I was watching at the time, and I've been going by Fireball forever and ever and ever, and that can go either way. Like I'm doing it really well or crashing and burning. And so I've kind of kept
Yeah,
it all these years.
yeah,
Except it's really annoying now because every service I try to sign into, someone's already taken it.
yeah. I could easily sidetrack us into this,
Uh,
but I'm not going to. There's a whole thing on OG accounts, isn't there?
yeah,
Where yeah, like if you've got an OG account, it's a good thing. People sell those things on the dark web. I mean,
really
that's the kind of world we're in now. Yeah,
weird.
I, yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. It's a bit of a rabbit hole that I could go into in some depth, but yeah, be careful if you've got an OG account.
Okay, danger. So yeah, I've
Yeah,
got a acid rain navigator here for those that are wondering. This is one I built a couple shows ago. Works fantastically well. I've been testing it in my rec for a couple weeks or a week or so. Functions perfectly as advertised. All the soldering is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it all apart again. Why
nice.
would you do such a thing? Specifically because I want to clean and coat the board. If you notice that this is not at all clean yet. Um, so I still got a lot of leftover flux on here, and people say no clean flux maybe, but I don't believe it, and I can show you why. This is an LED cube that I built when I was just getting back into electronics. It's almost what I want to say a like a decade old at this point, and I built it in Hawaii. It was one of the first things that I built. Like I said, back when I was just starting, I probably used some substandard solder, but it's still supposed to be no clean stuff. But the combination of living in Hawaii and having a lot of salt in the air, even up at 1,000 feet where we were, and the flux, it's an acid, right? It burns
Yeah,
and erodes the copper on the board. So I opened that up, and this is what it ended up looking like inside after a decade. So
yeah. That's
because,
pretty hardcore.
that's pretty messy. That's disgusting, and
Yeah,
it just caused the micro to reset over and over again. I cleaned it up and I fixed it, so that's done. But this is the reason why I don't recommend just wrapping up your boards and sending them out into the world. Because this could happen and people will not be happy about it. So I do something called conformal coating, which is pretty standard in the industry for really hardcore boards, military applications and stuff. They'll use a full urethane. This is a silicone. It's a little easier to take off again if you do need to rework something, but it's just paint essentially, right? It's a clear coat, but it keeps, once you clean it, it keeps the oxygen away from the board and will keep everything from rusting away, rotting away. So
Yeah, makes sense.
that's what I'm doing.
I have got a question for you, Jason.
Sure.
You know, like you made that cube
Mm-hmm.
when you wanted to get back into electronics.
Yep.
Why would you choose that? Were you trying to do like a do or die get back into electronics?
It's actually a pretty simple circuit. It looks gigantic, right? Because it's physically large, but I mean it's just a bunch of LEDs in a lattice and 512 LEDs because it's 8 by 8.
Yeah.
And you build a little jig, a whole bunch of holes. You stick all the LEDs, fold the leads down, and solder it all up. The fun bit was actually doing the microcontroller. That's also a PIC. I talk about PIC and microchip a lot on the show. That's also a PIC 18, I think. 16, maybe 16F. So it's not a beefy micro at all. But I completely filled it with different patterns. It sits there and does it rotates through I think 7 or 8 different types of patterns, and it's all calculated in real time. The hardest thing was actually to get it to generate random numbers. It's actually a pseudo-random lookup table. It's not real random, but it looks good enough for government work. And then I actually built one for the local that video game theme bar out in America Town. And so he's got one, and they constantly get comments about it. But I mean, now you can buy kits or even full-blown ones online. At the time, I think there was only one guy who had actually done it, and he put it out on YouTube and said, I thought that's awesome, I want one. And so yeah, do that. Build it.
But imagine if you had a dead LED right in the middle.
I have one dead LED. It's way in the back though, and I haven't. I've been hoping no one notices.
I mean, knowing you, I know that gives you sleepless nights as well.
Yeah, so. I keep thinking about it, but it's right at the bottom. It's right at the bottom, right where it actually goes into the. That's the extent of my woodworking skill, by the way. If you want to see that, and it looks. I suppose it looks okay, but that, yeah,
I'm looking for the dead one.
It's right in the back. It's hard to tell on this pad. Can you? It's like the third one in from the right on the. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's all I can see.
Yeah. now I'm gonna fix that. Oh, quick behind the the curtain. Okay.
No, I think I'm just developing a theme of finding the thing that you will be annoyed about in your build.
Oh, thank you for that. There's enough. There's enough things that I have to worry about. I don't really need you pointing them out to me. Thanks for that.
It's also 6:30 a.m.
Well done. No, you know how to push buttons.
Just be blank me for a week. No, there was an interesting point you brought up in regard to random not being true random, because obviously with modular, random and modulation are things that we all like to get involved with.
Sure.
The idea of random comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially as I've started to kind of like, as we'll see later on the show, get into more like these non-linear circuit designs,
mm-hmm.
purely building them. But when you do so, you get into the mindset, and I've watched Tom Whitwell interviewing Andrew from Non-Linear Circuits,
mm-hmm.
and he's done a PhD on chaos, which I think I might have mentioned before. And it's fantastic. I mean, I really recommend. We should really put a link to that. Can we do that?
Absolutely. Just you can talk about it, and I'll slip it in later.
But there's a really worthwhile discussion between Tom Whitwell and Andrew where they discuss the finer points of random versus chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that, and I think especially, we've got all these CV and gate inputs in our modules.
Mm-hmm.
We're used to we're used to LFOs, linear voltage. The idea of true random is pretty cool, to be honest, and chaos as well.
Right.
It's exciting that there's makers out there, bringing this to the table, because, for years we've been used to the standard sine, triangle, square as a modulation source.
Sure. I mean, isn't the noise that comes out of that massively amplified broke breakdown. What is it? You exceed the base emitter breakdown voltage or something, and then they massively amplify it. It just makes a whole bunch of true noise. But that's literally like galactic background radiation stuff. So that's pretty as random as you can get.
But there are people who have taken on, this utilization of additional modulation sources. Like there's that biometric one.
Oh, I saw that. That looks so cool. Yeah.
It's like it's like using, the one that's you put it on a leaf on a plant,
Yep.
and it can basically give you modulation from it. I mean, that's pretty cool. And I don't, I think there are some modules out there where you can get, where there is a cosmic radiation type of, module.
Yeah, I think those are absolutely stellar and fun. Stellar because it's galactic. Get it? Sorry, that was not intentional, and it is 5:30 in the morning, so you can forgive me or not. There's a few of those that are out there that are just really, really interesting. One of them is the book barcode reader. You walk into a library and of course it's not random at all, but it can generate pretty much anything because it's not your normal modulation source, right?
No, of course. I mean, there's the ones there's some that are based around electromagnetic radiation, I think. And you can basically get a probe and go around and get different. I mean, these have been around for a few years now.
Right. Well, isn't that the same thing as like the RF Nomad and stuff? I mean, that's specific to
it. That's it. Yeah. I think that's it. But I think it's useful.
Yeah. And I picked up the Soma Electronics Ether. That little box. That's just a wideband receiver with like no filtering on it. It's the funnest thing because I'll walk around and I've got some video. I'll put it up here. I walk around and just walk through the supermarket and you can hear all the compressors and things going off in the refrigeration aisle. I've been walking down the street and of course they have all these little fully automated parking meters and garages and such, and you can walk over to the machine and press it. And I touched the little metal antenna to it, and I started picking up jazz. the machine was amplifying and retransmitting jazz through its chassis, which is just the funniest thing. Wait, what? Not at all what I expected, but okay.
Maybe that's where it comes from.
Jazz? It comes from.
Yeah.
Someone's going to be mad at you right now. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Dude.
I think.
All right.
So what, are you still in the cleaning process now?
Yeah, I wanted to touch up one joint that I didn't like the look of. So I've cleaned off the majority of the leftover flux material, and it doesn't need to be perfect. I mean, I like perfection, of course, which is the reason why I'm going back at it after I let all the IPA dry. But for the most part, what the conformal coating does is it creates a barrier so that you can't easily short the unit because all the contacts are protected, and then you can't the oxygen won't get to it, so it won't oxidize, which is rust. So all of the above. So you get something that looks like this, and it's cleaned, and you don't see any more flux around, especially around the large pads. Like when you do these big surface, the big through hole pots and jacks and stuff, it tends to build up a lot around those because you use so much more solder. So I clean all that off, and then that's it. So it's done, it's clean, it's prepped. I let it dry for just a second, and then we'll pull out the paint.
One of the things that I've I was going to mention was this idea that people say that there's this argument that IPA, isopropyl alcohol, is potentially more harmful than good.
Really?
Yeah, and and I think you remember in the summer I did a little experiment because I read in Ray Wilson's book, the guy, his book he produced. Mm-hmm. He mentions a mix of IPA and And what's the
Acetone.
stuff called? Acetone,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah. IPA, 75% IPA, 25% acetone. And so I started using it, and sure enough, it's a very aggressive cleaner, especially for flux.
Yeah.
I actually found it, and I was thinking, wow, this is it, you know.
Yep.
And then I mentioned it on Instagram, and people started talking to me about what happens with, acetone. Apparently, because it's chemically similar to certain plastics, it will basically cause the breakdown of them.
Sure.
So basically, what I did is conducted a small experiment where I got a jam jar. I don't know if that's a international word, but a glass
We know what
jar.
jam is. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I got a glass jar with a lid and put some components of selection in there. I
Hmm.
put in some headers, some just some of those little sockets, two different types, and basically left it in the bright sun and some like load of different components. Left it in bright sunlight for a month, maybe even longer. And at first there was no change at all. So I was quite smug, thinking, Ray Wilson was right.
Hmm.
I'm right. I know what
Yeah.
because Ray Wilson said this info. So then and then I carried on using it, and then something changed. The water, well, no, the liquid
Hmm.
in the glass
Hmm.
started getting a bit powdery, and there was like a residue.
Mm.
And what it was is some of the softer, the black. Uh, I didn't use Donkey Kongs. I used like the cheap version of those, like the
Sure.
real cheap
Yep.
ones. Um, and they started to degrade quite significantly.
Mm.
All the edges got rounded off. Yeah, and it was
Wow.
and it caused me to have a rethink. I think we talked about it at the time
Hmm.
actually, because I think you were interested
Yeah.
because you know everyone likes to have a clean board, um, and maybe this was a new frontier, but actually, I think 100% IPA is the only way. But again, there's going to be variations in brands of that as well.
Yeah, I've seen people. I mean, I always go for the 100% stuff, or as close
Yeah,
as you can get. I think this is 99. Realistically, 100% doesn't exist. Yeah, 99.5 per volume
yeah,
is listed on the bottle here. Um, I see people use the 70% stuff all the time because it's cheap. You can get it everywhere. I mean, that's the typical drugstore variant. But if you can get
yeah,
the, I mean, most of the time the other 30% is water, so it's not really going to hurt anything. I mean, I've stuck. It's the first time you do it is super scary, but to clean a large board, I'll just stick it in the sink, hose it off.
yeah.
I've done that.
I'm not big
It's
into that.
no, it
Yeah,
seems so very wrong because you're taught electronics and water don't mix. Electronics and water don't mix. But I mean, all this stuff is wrapped in plastic and packaged, and it's not going to hurt your solder at all. It's just make sure you dry your board before you try to do anything. The
yeah,
point is you don't want to flash the water to steam and cause something to pop. Like physically, that's that steam power um, pressure. So you make sure your board is completely dried slowly in open air
yeah.
before you try to rework anything. That's the
Makes
yeah, that's the only
sense.
thing. Okay, so I've got my stuff here. I can't actually. I just opened it, so I can't really. Let's do this. There we go. So there we go. Just a conformal coating. It's sold this way. Like I said, it's basically just a silicone clear coat. There's nothing super special about it. But it doesn't take more than a couple minutes to take your board and get it some way that you can actually keep it neat. I generally start at one end. I'm doing this upside down and for the camera, so I can't see. I'm going to turn it the other way. There we go. Tell me if you can see or not, because I'm just going to go.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
see.
So it's literally just this. Just paint down the board. It tends to spread pretty easily. I'm going to paint all over my finger. Good job. I always make sure to get in and under pins around the packages. Again, you want to be really careful if you're dealing with mechanicals. Don't paint close to little surface mount buttons and things because it will wick underneath and then the button will never work again. So that's a problem. But for this stuff, I mean, it's just fine because there's nothing mechanical on this side of the board. And the nice practical upshot of this is that it becomes all shiny, and then everybody goes, "Ooh, nice board."
Yeah, I must admit, I do like shiny things.
I think that's a human part of the human condition. Ooh, shiny stuff. Yeah. Just make sure you get in between.
Shiny or really matte, never between.
Right. Yeah. The really matte is actually really useful. I learned this from doing
Yeah,
plastic models. Is if you do a matte finish, it hides all the imperfections. So if you have something that really you didn't do a good job on it, make it a matte finish as opposed to, and it'll hide all your
that's good.
mistakes. So there we go, and that's that. And then you just let it sit and dry for a bit. There we go.
Good work,
There we go.
Jason.
All right. Cool, huh? All
Yeah, it
right.
is shiny.
Nice. So let's move on while that's drying because I have to wait for this. It's probably about 10, 15 minutes before I can turn this over and do the other side of the board. So let's move.
Is it best to
Pardon?
quick question about the
Sure.
drying? Is it best to let it dry naturally, or do you use a heat source like a maybe a radiator to do
Yeah,
that?
I've never had to. It really doesn't take that long to dry
Fair enough.
by itself. It's just watching paint dry. So this is the podcast about watching paint dry. Here we go. All right, so let's move on. You have finally gotten back into soldering a little bit, and you got yourself a little microscope camera, which is cool. Microphone camera. So we'll do. We're gonna take a look at these. So this is you, or this is
Is this me? No,
no,
this
this
is
is
this
this
is
is
my
this is your
wife.
wife. She's we've mentioned it before on the show. I have tremendous respect. She's got amazing dexterity. I think it all comes from all the other crafty things that she does, but produces an
Yeah,
absolute top quality product. And I'm shocked that you didn't get her to do stuff before before now.
I know. To be honest, it took me to you know, you have to get to a certain stage yourself before you can pass on the information in any kind of state, you know, that makes sense to anyone. Although I probably would have learned from her if I'd actually explained it to her earlier.
Sure, sure. No, do it this way.
But yeah,
Nice. Uh,
so basically, she's just like the method that we use is to tin one of the pads, put a pool of flux
mhm.
in, and then actually Darren and my wife turn out use the same technique. I was doing an additional step, but they like reflow the tin pad and place at the same
Mhm.
time. That way you get much more efficient, um, board creation. Otherwise, you're into a situation like I was, where you're like doing a separate placement point. Um, but really, Jane, she's very good at doing anything like this. I think a lot of my problem is my eyesight. So I think having good magnification is important. But even so, even with a lot of magnification, it's still having good eyesight is a benefit to anything that requires this level of visibility.
Sure.
Um, a lot of people have mentioned that I use quite a big soldering tip, but I've actually found that's actually for me personally a a benefit because I like to get a lot of heat in one go.
Yeah.
And I find with a finer tip, you're actually more prone to get pad damage because you haven't completely, you might try and move something, but you've only locally heated.
Sure.
But with the with a bigger, flatter tip, I would probably there are other types, like a chisel type would probably be just as well, be better.
Mhm.
In fact, when Darren was round, he uses like a more like pointed cone chisel tip,
Mhm.
and that he seemed to get very good results out of that. And I think here Jane's just going around, and after you do the initial kind of, it's more of a tack solder. She's gone around and made sure that each of those tacks has got enough solder in it,
Mhm.
which is actually, when I was watching, I was, when you just think, I'm not. Jane's, like, as you know, better at soldering than me, but I was thinking, oh, when you think, oh, she's doing the extra little bit that I'm happy about,
Mhm.
because you just, And here she's doing a TL 72, putting like liquid flux down
The
first,
TSOP
and then she'll
package.
just
So this is pretty
yeah
small. Um, but she's
yeah
gonna
it's
do the
just,
same technique, is one leg down
that's right
and then
yeah.
you do
Just
drag,
but
or
she no, she's doing individual.
wow.
I think yeah, I think that you use a small enough gauge solder. It's like 4 mil, I
Mm-hmm.
think, which enables you to be able to accurately feed. So I think that's the big issue. Is like if you've got a much, if the solder diameter is a massive issue, I find with soldering SMD, because it's much harder to control the amount of solder you're
Mm-hmm.
applying. If you've got a 7 mil solder, then you've got to have a much finer touch when it comes to pushing the solder in, compared to if you've got a much greater give with 3 mil.
Mm-hmm.
You basically we were videoing this real time, so it's probably me and Jane chatting rubbish now. But,
No worries.
but I think she's just about to place it. Yeah, she's just found it. Oh yeah, I remember what the issue was. There was an issue because on this particular package there was no line to indicate the position of pin 1. It was a sloped edge type, like when it's got the slope on the edge of the package, and we were basically having to look up where the position of pin 1 was in relation to the slope.
Okay.
And the thing is, we're used to, like, we're starting off with through hole. You're used to having either a dot or a line, but some packages do not have any indication on the actual package top. You have to look to the side and see where the sloping
Mm-hmm.
is. And that is actually, I'd always say check the data sheet. Never assume that because you'll just be causing yourself grief. So she's using the same method. She's got a tin pad on there, and she's just positioning really carefully,
Yep.
and then just basically reflowing pad. It's not actually pin 1 in this case. It's pin 8,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep. Looks like, but I mean, it doesn't really matter where you
Yeah.
start, so long as you get them
No,
out.
no, exactly. And then just basically not use again. First of all, tacking in opposite corners to prevent physical movement of the
Right.
IC, and then because that's obviously, I know movement is a real problem, and you have to be pretty careful that you don't tear a pad. Although touch wood, I've never torn a SMD pad. Touch, yeah,
I am doing that right now.
yeah, yeah,
It's I mean
and yeah. Even
it's a good way to ruin your day. For sure.
I
That's
think,
interesting. See, I mean, I've seen a lot of people do the drag. You've seen drag solder technique.
yeah,
She
yeah,
didn't do any of that at all. It literally is pin to pin, which is impressive.
yeah. Even with that big tip, because of I think a lot of it is down to Jane's hand-eye coordination and incredibly steady hands.
Yep.
That's the way I do it as well. The thing is, putting this stuff out there, you learn, and getting the comments back, you learn what other people are doing. Somebody today messaged saying, "Oh, that they hand solder but using paste, for
Mm-hmm.
example."
Sure.
Or you get people who are basically just using solder in one way, paste in another way. Some people use like a tacky flux. People are using liquid flux. And I think a lot of it we're doing in isolation, and I think that's the reason for putting this video up here, is to basically, this is not the way to do SMD. This is just a way
Mm-hmm.
that my wife uses. I do it slightly differently. You do it slightly differently. My mate Darren, he does it
Yep.
differently. And the important thing, I believe, is to be open-minded and basically not not be prescriptive, like the guy who said about the 7 minute soldering
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Or 7 seconds.
7 seconds.
Yeah,
Seven. Yeah. Not 7 minutes.
yeah.
But still,
But
7 seconds is an eternity when you're sitting there baking, on the pad on the board, baking your components. That's the worst thing, right? I mean, a lot of them are
yeah, totally.
tolerant at a certain temperature for a certain time, and if you read the data sheet, you're going to find out precisely what it is. And if you don't do that, you can do some damage. What was I building recently that was actually really super critical about that in the build doc? I don't remember. One of the more recent builds was specifically saying don't overheat the components, because they're only safe to like 265 degrees or something, which is lower than most of the time your soldering iron will be. So I think this is you.
Yeah, this is me, and I know it's me because there's a piece of blue tack that's just flown over the screen in the top left. That was stuck to my visor.
Oh, good night.
Who know? Who knows how it, how it ended up there? And you can see straight away my hand-eye coordination is just like, complete different variety of blobs there, small to big. This is standard. This is classic Gareth soldering. And you'll see my big potato hands getting involved. And like generally, this is not going to be pretty compared to Jake.
No, don't be so down on yourself. You get the job done.
Yeah.
This just what I like about this is it just proves, you know what, anybody can do this. Don't be afraid of the SMD stuff.
No, that is the important message. And actually, if you think about the time cost of putting a resistor through a through hole compared to putting, like in this example, capacitors into SMD, you haven't got to worry about the physical side of it.
Right.
You've got to, you can train yourself in picking up a very small item with tweezers. That's just a muscle memory thing. But when it comes to all of there's a lot more activities with through hole.
Yeah, how many times do you have to pick up and put down your soldering iron doing a through hole board?
And when we all try and change our order and our sequence to try and improve that, and in the end, sometimes you get a better result.
that looks interesting with the green screen filter on, but just remember what kind of component density you can get too. I mean, if you want small HP modules, SMD is almost a requirement at this point, and there's so much available. You get amazingly fun things in the format. Try it is the message.
I'm just watching. I'm like, when I'm watching myself do this, and like, I'm not frightened to say that I'm not. I'm not the most dexterous person. I'm kind of cringing a little bit, but if I can do it, like Jason said, anyone can do it, and I think that's the important message, especially with the cost of SMD components for a non-linear circuits build is pretty low.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the great thing about Andrew is that he uses commonly found component values. They're not all 0.01%, like you get in the mutable builds. You know what it's like on those mutable ones. They're basically you're into unobtainium to basically build. Well, they are though, aren't they? A lot of them you're like, well, should I use a X5V or all the different types of capacitors?
Sure. I mean,
I don't know.
I've never had too many issues. I mean, capacitor is capacitor in my mind. I mean, there's some better manufacturers for sure. But I mean, for the most part, if one is sold out, the bill of materials, you can't get that exact part from Mauser or whatever it is. There's 100 others for the common passive components, right?
Well, that's the great thing. I personally have started getting into these SMD ones and just using pretty bog standard stuff that's cheap. I mean, it's comparable with like the Tadar kind of prices for 100 resistors. You can still get in the UK, even on eBay, fairly close to that.
Sure.
Not that could be a massive load of rubbish, but what I'm saying is you can get them cheap.
Sure.
Whereas like you try and find 100 resistors on eBay in the UK, you have to pay a lot of money. Like too much.
That's interesting. That's interesting to note. I would point out that if you are ordering from Mauser or the like, check your the volume pricing really carefully, because there's a lot of times that if you are ordering 10 of something because you need 7 or whatever else it is to get the volume, look at the price for 100, because chances are you're going to get the price down to a point where it's almost worth it. Like if you ever have designs on building another one, or you want to build a few more different modules from the same designer, they usually use the same components. So if you buy 100 of them, it's going to be as cheap as buying 25 or so, depending on where the volume pricing ends up. So I'm going to do this really carefully.
Just on that point,
I want to make sure that that's not, see, it's still shiny. So I'm just checking to make sure it's actually done. So it looks done, so I can flip this over and we can do the other side. Okay.
I mean, just further, I mean, that's a really good point you're making about the numbers when it comes to doing SMD builds. There's another really important thing, which is basically due to the size of these things, it's so easy to lose them. So, you know, it might sound like it's, you know, that you won't lose them, but honestly, when you get a Mauser cart and it says 7, you know, 100, you know, it won't be 700K, but say 720K, and you only buy 7, you better be sure that you're not going to lose one.
Or sneeze.
Because you're, yeah, because honestly, my carpet claim more SMD resistors than any other component, because they, especially with my early technique, where I was basically holding a resistor down using a metal pin, which worked well. But if you put too much pressure, those things go fly off.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll never see them.
Gone.
Honestly, and I tried to find them.
Well, of course, it's money, but it's not that much money.
It's not so much the money; it's more the time. Because if you've got a Mauser build, you know, your Mauser cart. Imagine if you ping off your last resistor, you have to wait
and pay $8 in shipping or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. So yeah, any resistor or capacitor, any passive, just reconsider your numbers. If it says 10, buy at least 25.
Sure, and that may kick you over, like I said, into the next price, the discount category, which is going to be as cheap as just buying your 10 in the first place anyway.
Yeah, totally. Well, I wish I'd done that. I remember, yeah, literally had to wait. I had to go onto eBay because I didn't want to face the Mauser, you know, postage for, like, you can't basically, unless you're buying over a certain value on Mauser, you get charged heavily for postage.
Right.
And also it's the economic, you know, I have got a bit of a gripe with Mauser in their packaging. You know, they use a heavy amount of packaging.
Just a little bit, yes. I'm aware of that.
yeah. And I think that when it comes to, like, if you will literally get a shoebox size box with like 3 SMD resistors in it.
Yep.
I mean, it's not. I'm not joking.
No, they're really, really silly people. Whoever does the packaging, I understand, but I think honestly, I don't think they do incredibly small volume sales most of the time. In their defense, I really think, because I've ordered large things from them and they have boxes for that stuff, no issue. In fact, there was a time I was buying rails, aluminum extruded rails, from them. It turned out that those were 2.5 millimeter screw instead of the 3, which did not work. Which did not work, and I was really I thought I had found the holy grail, you know, cheap rails. It's like, nope.
We've all been down that road.
For sure.
I mean, like, it's like you have to go far and wide to find a cheap set of rails.
I've never
then you
found.
Know 2.5 mil.
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, that's the thing, is you get the wrong size.
Yeah.
I've never found it. If I do, I will let everybody know. Sing it from the rooftops. All right.
I know there's a few Facebook groups where people talk about it, but at the end of the day, we just have to accept that the Eurorack rails are expensive.
Yeah, but I wish they didn't do that, though. Or someone's going to come up with it after this show, I would think. Just making sure that all this is. I mean, I know I didn't get any in there, but I'm just checking that it's not stuck, tacked, or anything. But I'm really, really careful around any of the physical components.
I know, especially after, you know, that was the big quality item on that build.
Yeah, the slider is gorgeous. Really is nice, and you know, it doesn't have any markings on it, which is frustrating because I'd love to know who made it and just get some more. Where did it come from? I could probably ask them, and they seem pretty cool. Okay, so that's that. Now it's literally just put it back together, but this is safe, protected, and sealed for all eternity. And if you do ever need to take it off, that same IPA. So if I needed to rework that, the op amp on here for whatever reason, IPA and a good scrub will take it off. It doesn't
That's good.
it doesn't look quite so pretty again if you try to reseal it, unless you paint over the entire board. But I mean, this isn't that much surface area, so it's okay. So what's next for you?
I am basically thinking about doing some more live stuff in beginning of next year. So kind of had a realization today that I should be using this time to really work on my set. Um,
You're
I'm
sick.
hoping.
Your sick time is what you mean.
No, I mean just using. Last when I did that Brighton modular session, I had like 20 days to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, I did all that work and just to get myself into a position where I had the muscle memory and I knew my patch well.
Sure.
But obviously, if I was doing another live performance like that, I'd want to have, know it better, so that I could really, tune into where you when you can deliver the good stuff on cue. That's
Sure.
what I was, and I think that, knowing that I'm looking to do that next year, I'm trying to like freeze my rack, although I've just made a load of changes by putting that triple sloths in it. Um, and I've got the U Jove in there, which
Nice.
I'm enjoying that. I've got another. This is another thing. I've ordered Stasis Leak. The Frequency
Okay.
Central
Yeah.
new module,
Yep.
and that is an interesting little guy because I know we kind of have gone around this on the show a bit, but most of the modules that are delay modules, even the Bafeco offering uses that PT chip, the PT2, the delay one. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
what it's called.
Yeah.
It uses, and the Frequency Central one doesn't use that. It uses a DSP, which is pretty interesting. So again, I think we talked about that as well. It's a Beltron. I'm just having
Mm-hmm.
a look now, but basically it's the Beltron ABE FX subboard, which has got
Mm-hmm.
that cool audio.
Sure.
It's got the cool audio V1000 chip in it. I mean, that's some interesting stuff. I mean, other than that, I was looking around and I think that the Pico DSP interested me. My mate Alex from the States, Alex Imami, basically, I was chatting to him and he suggested that, and that has got a decent DSP on it.
Mm.
But then
Interesting.
most stuff is using that old school technology, the quite noisy, the PT chip,
Right.
PT2399. The print is basically it's been around forever.
Right.
It's quite
Yeah. No,
noisy.
it's a pretty standard, well-known component. I'm trying to stay away from pre-packaged chips. I mean, you see so many like SEM clone oscillator chips and stuff like that. Well,
Well,
everybody uses the same oscillator. Well, then it's the same thing, you know.
I know. I do agree with you. I mean, I stumbled across this. Have you seen that Electrosmith?
Oh,
Uh,
I wanted to
yeah,
ask you about those because I just saw Kinkus's video
yeah.
on that, and it looks really, really interesting. Um,
Well,
but
let me just interrupt you very quickly.
sure.
There's a guy on my Instagram
Yep.
feed. He's designed a module that uses four of them in one module. Four of those little. Essentially, it is just like a 3340 VCO
Yep.
on a tiny little chip. But I just love the idea that people are miniaturizing, because especially with Euro rack format, anything we can do to make loads of function in a small space, and it
Is
is cool that
very
people,
welcome. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, especially now those Electrosmith. I mean, I literally started looking at it. The fact that you can get a whole VCO on a tiny little board, And this is just the beginning, I'm sure. There's going to be a lot of these. You know, that's the same, similar to, that's what the stasis leak took me to that.
Right.
See, because you've got,
It's
you
still
know,
teasing.
I know, upsets me.
Oh, no, hardly. You know
I
what?
know.
There is no contact. The front board. There's no actual contact. I went through this looking for it. There is no electrical connection from the front PCB thing. So our hope that these were touch doesn't appear to be
Right.
true, which is too bad. This is my next thing I have to coat, but I'm not going to take it apart on stream here.
That is cool. I've been thinking a lot about controllers as well. You know, like to introduce a human, you know, like I was thinking like joysticks.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, to basically put in some like human dynamics into my patches. Problem is they're quite costly in HP terms.
Well, what about that new keyboard from the what's it, the Touche company? What's their name? You've seen that, right? I mean, it's not a DIY project, but whoops,
Let's have a look at it.
I have to edit that out. It's a
Oh
serial number.
yeah. Was
My
it Touche keyboard?
It's not a keyboard. The Touche is not a keyboard. The Touche is just a piece of wood that you can you touch, and it
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking
outputs
at it.
CV.
Yeah, I've seen.
But that same company just came out with a full keyboard with massive expressivity. I mean, Cuckoo was talking about it,
Oh yeah,
and a few others.
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
I mean, it looks really intriguing. I don't play keys. Doesn't help me.
No, not awful.
But the Touche has always been something I kind of lusted over. I was like, that would be really, really nice because they have a version that outputs CV, and that would be fantastic to just be able to introduce something when you connect that to a couple of VCAs, and you're off to the races.
I think we're all looking to interact with our simps in a more human way.
Sure.
Put in that control. I mean, I've been listening to, watching this guy, this French guy on YouTube, where it's everything's with loopers, right?
Yep.
And basically, he's using these 45,000 loopers. Have you seen those?
No.
It's like a standalone unit,
Mm-hmm.
and he's basically not using. He's using all kinds of non-standard instruments like rubber bands, shaky things, and just live, because he's got the confidence in the looper.
Sure.
He's basically live sequencing all this random stuff. I mean, he's a few years old now. It's 2015.
Yep.
But I just think we're missing some of that in the Euro rack.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to see more of that. Like I said, I keep thinking that Touche is going to be something that I'm eventually going to find, whether I find one used or not. I don't know. So they always put these stickers in here, and I've had it. Yeah, Befeco guys, I've had it go either way. This one actually does. Hooray!
Oh, you got him. Yeah.
But I've actually gotten the sticker and not gotten the knurlies. It was a little disappointing. Not that it really matters. I've ordered a couple hundred at this point, little bins. I pass them off to people every once in a while. I'll go to the show, and some guys in the Tokyo thing are like, "Wow, that's so convenient to be able to screw and unscrew stuff like from the test rack." It's like, yeah, you've never seen them before. It's like,
Strange.
please get some.
But, although I did try and use them today, and every now and then I've got a bit of a funny issue with my rail, one of my rails, where it's kind of drifted inside the actual, you know, the insert.
Mm-hmm.
The threaded insert has moved slightly too close to the actual edge of the rail.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't get a knurly in there.
Sure.
So I had to basically loosen off the entire bottom.
Hey, puppy.
Do you ever have to do that?
I have a different issue that it'll shift side to side, but then once you line up one module, it generally corrects itself. I've never had a vertical problem with that. The one place I do have an issue is because I designed my own little portable case, is that the wood here, I do have the case. So you can see here, this is very tight.
Oh
this
yeah,
little gap.
yeah, yeah.
And so I will actually use it. These will take an Allen wrench, larger hex key wrench, and
I've been using
you can
screwdrivers on
use a
mine.
screwdriver, but the hex also works. So I use that and to put those in. So that's the only problem is I can't get my finger in that. I mean, there's just no way. But it works perfectly well. Nerdseek Cameo.
Is that a special color one?
No, nothing special about that one. The blue is the beta unit that I had,
Okay.
but that's in the main rack at this point. I couldn't plug I mean I could, but I couldn't bring myself. OCD said you cannot plug the silver triggers into the blue Nerdseek. It will not work.
Yeah,
It will not work. It'll work perfectly
I
well.
get that.
Electrically, it's fine, but no.
Spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, that
No.
beta one is collector's item. I actually think I'm going to buy another one because he's upgraded
Oh.
the displays now, and it's very pretty. It's a much nicer display. The original displays were actually end of life. Remember we talked about products being
Yeah.
just end of life, and that happens. So you get a different display product, but then he had to redesign the front panel because it was a larger display. But the colors are nice, and it's a really pretty new display. And so I'm seriously thinking about buying a third Nerdseek, which is just, but
Why
but
not?
I want the display. It's bigger. I mean my eyes are getting older. I'm sorry, and I do this soldering
Oh.
thing a lot, so it's I can feel the strain. I'm just at a point where I really want larger displays. I buy the larger phone. I buy the larger computer if I can, or I'll
Yeah.
plug it into a TV. I mean that's the trick is to buy a cheap HDMI TV and plug your computer into it just to get a large display. Happens to the best of us, and then the rest of us.
I mean, I'm pretty much blind, so
There you go.
I'm there.
Good enough. Well, all right. So I'm gonna do this. I think I've been showing off here, but we haven't talked about it at all. I've been waiting for this since May when we went and saw them. This is
Yeah.
the CV2 MIDI converter. So this is not MIDI to CV. Everybody has a MIDI to CV. I'm talking going the other way. So I can use my Klee and the Metropolis and the Turing machine and all my other weird Euro sequencers that do fun, interesting things to control non-Euro gear, which is going to be a lot of fun.
It's something that I like the idea of, but I don't have the prerequisite cool Euro only sequencers like Metropolis, for example. Although I do
Why not?
mainly, I know. I ask myself this, and especially after I watch your video, and I do, I love that style of sequencing. I do. But it's just a choice I've made, and also I have got the Noodle box, which is fantastic,
Right.
and that just has a MIDI out on it, so
Well, there
I
you go.
just could
Yeah,
use that.
that's just
Yeah.
fine. And you like the Nerdseek as well, and that has a MIDI expander that you can get. So
I like
so that'll do.
I'll do like that.
Yeah. What else does? I'm not sure, but I mean, there's so many options in that regard. But I mean, the Nerdseek you have to program. This being able.
The Westlich does.
Yeah. What about? Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is your
Yeah.
yeah? How's that
Yeah, it
build
does.
going?
Well, it got pretty late last weekend, and Darren was supposed to be home on the Sunday and ended up staying till probably about 6 p.m. and we still hadn't finished it,
Oh, good night.
mainly because of my talking.
Yep.
Yeah. But so Darren's kindly taken them back, both of them back to his.
Oh,
I feel like,
so you're not even
yeah,
doing it.
well, I've done all the passives and I've basically done everything apart from the sockets,
Right.
which I had done some of. It literally was just the panel fit, which it was pretty much done. But it was just, what it's like. You find a problem, or the programming doesn't go to plan.
Right.
Just getting your like if you're in a soldering mode and then switching to programming mode, getting your laptop out, getting your ST-Link software, finding out there's some minor issue.
Out of date. Oh, radar's poking me.
Yeah.
What do you want, puppy? Hey, Bubby. You want a cameo as well? No, he's disappeared again. Oh well. Probably wants to go out. I was showing these off the. Oh, there you go. Oh, you are coming. Okay, come on. Come on. You can cameo. Oh, Radar's got his Santa Claus outfit on because it's cold here.
Very nice.
Hello, puppy. Hello. 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 Yeah, so I was showing off that these are unbelievably tiny little resistors.
Oh yeah.
I love these.
That is. I don't. So this is the thing.
No, I don't like them. That was 100% sarcasm.
Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't.
No worries.
Well, it's funny actually. There was a Facebook post that happened just yesterday, and a guy was asking what was a recommendation for a first module,
Mm-hmm.
and someone basically said they built Even VCO as their first module.
Okay.
And I was like, and I built Even VCO, and basically, is that it has those small resistors, and it's very dense. The Bafako builds tend, and I can kind of see that on that board already.
Yeah.
They basically fit as much as they can on through hole.
Yeah, and this is not a small board. I mean, there's a lot going on here. You can see how big that is. I don't remember exactly how many HP the unit is, but it's eight sliders across, and all and
So there's
all,
two schools
and all the jacks.
isn't it?
Yeah, so that's a lot.
You basically can either go down to 1/8 watt, or you can do standing resistors.
Right.
Both of which fill me with dread. Yeah.
The standees never bothered me too much. I think I started that way actually. What was it? One of the Slob modules early on that I think I built was all standing, and it doesn't bother me. I fold them over. I mean, I'm always skiff conscious when I'm building, so I try to make it as tight as possible. In fact, I don't know if anybody's seen it. Like a couple of years ago when I was baking the micro. Ornament and crime and temps utils and braids and micro braids and all those things. I think it was the ornament and crime specifically that I took a leap of faith and said, you know what, I'm pretty sure this board is good. And so instead of making the sockets and the things on the teensy and making it stand up another full board width away, right? Because it basically makes it 2 board deep, even though it's really only 1 board. I just took a set of headers and soldered that teensy directly to the board.
Nice.
And I lucked out because it worked perfectly well. And then I have these 2 super slim ornament and crime and temps util sets that I could put in a skiff that's like maybe an inch deep, which would be a cool thing to be able to bring on the airplane.
Sure. It's been a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got a lot done here. I am going to start work on this one, and we'll see how it goes. I don't think I'll finish it today, so don't hold your breath for that. But one thing I was looking at right before the show, and this is what I was going to hit you with. I could pretty much guarantee that you're going to say I know nothing, but I wanted to ask anyway. What do you know about the modular video synthesizer things?
Well, are you talking about oscillographics?
That one, the
LZX.
there was another one. What's his name?
I do know a little bit about this.
The Chav thing.
The Cadet. You know the other one, the Cadet that you just looked at. Well, interestingly, when I was at the Brighton festival, the Brighton Modular event in the summer, I happened to do a soldering workshop with Andrew Duffy, and I can't remember the other guy's name, the guy who actually took the workshop. It might come to me. I built an oscillographics module for drawing on oscilloscopes, and during that I met it was like a niche, niche as you would say, a niche within a niche, of you think you've seen Eurorack and that's a thing, right? But then you find out there's this whole other world of things that look like Eurorack, but actually they're for video. Yeah, it's madness. Yes. and so basically I found myself, and I was at the pub on a Friday night. The ladies of Modular and I saw Andrew Duffy, and I said, "Are there any places left?" And I got the last place. I turned up late, embarrassingly, um,
Of course.
and basically sat down in this, and I was literally faced with a whole world of modular video synthesizer things
Nice.
I had no knowledge of.
Huh.
And I have come across, but what I've learned was basically normal. They basically, it's something to do with, so you get a normal Eurorack module,
Yep.
like a wavetable synthesizer.
Yep.
And if you can get, I think you have to uprate the amp chips to higher, so they can give a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, once they've got a higher, I'm paraphrasing from my terrible memory.
Yep.
But once they can output to a certain higher frequency, you can then use them, start to do this kind of vector or like oscillographics kind of work with them.
So it
And
really is kind of the same circuit design.
yeah,
Interesting.
essentially. I did get quite a lot of knowledge at the time from these guys. I mean, literally, there was a chap called Roland in there, who was very knowledgeable, and some of the guys on the course doing that workshop were heavily involved in the whole laser scene as well.
Sure. Well, that's what started me down this path. Is there are an awful lot of lasers kicking around the past few shows that I've been to, and well, I could start with RGB. I actually have, because of the video game thing, I have a whole bunch of like open source scan converter and tools like that to take RGB in and then use like a real HD monitor, HDMI, to display it, because I don't have any more CRTs around in my house. They just don't exist. So
well, this is what they were having to use these Sony these special Sony analog monitors,
right,
that most people haven't got anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've got the tools to be able to use a regular TV for it. So I think that's probably a route I'm going to try it maybe and see how it goes. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money or time on it, but until I know it's going to work properly or it's useful. But I thought it was neat. Yeah. So.
I was basically humbled by that. I was just trying to find on my phone some more details. I was pretty, when you kind of, I'm not that new to Eurorack really. Just I've been doing synths, forever.
Right.
But Eurorack's still very new to me.
Yeah.
But when I went down and basically found out there was this whole chapter of basically incredibly dedicated people producing stuff purely for video, I was like, I couldn't, I was still trying to get my head around basic principles within Eurorack, and to find out there's this whole other branch.
Mm-hmm. And it was a real tool that we've never touched on. That was my thing. It's like, wait a minute, all this stuff is out there. People are selling it. I think I found it because I was trolling through Thonks. Weird new stuff. What did we get in? And they had a whole slew of video related things. So
it's exciting. My friend. There's a couple of other branches as well. Like my friend Martin, who's doing synthesis based coding, so not like a tracker or these guys that do all this kind of command line based synthesis stuff.
Like a teletype and such.
He's doing he's written his own environment for dealing with video photos with a pipeline and combining images with all the synthesis concepts of LFOs, oscillators, drones, and he's open sourced it, put it up on GitHub, and now he's ported it to Pi.
Nice.
So you can so the idea being that you can take a Raspberry Pi, and he's going to do a mobile app, right, which can talk to it,
right,
and basically you could put an SD card in, and off you go. You've got this whole environment, and I just think it's exciting that people are using the concepts of synthesis in all these different ways. It's not just music.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that was a lot more information than I thought I'd get. Cool. No idea.
Yeah, sorry.
No, excellent. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I just didn't. I expected. No, I really don't know anything about it, mate. You know. Turned out I was wrong. Very cool.
Well, yeah, I wish I knew more about it, because I tell you, yeah, Andrew Duffy. If you don't follow him, go on his Instagram and check out the stuff they do with oscilloscopes is just crazy.
Nice. That'll be fun. I will definitely check that out. Awesome. So if you're still with us, thanks. Hit the like, subscribe, hit the bell to make sure you get notified. I guess that's how YouTube works. I hear people starting to say that now. If you don't press the bell, you don't get to know when we post a video, which is weird if you subscribe to something. But such is life. Post in the comments. Let us know if there's something you want us to cover, talk about, or if you want to chat with us directly. Find us on Instagram, Robot Dog Music.
Plink and plonk.
Good enough.
Plink and plonk.
N with an N.
Yeah, plink and plonk.
I'm gonna put that up on the screen for you right there. There.
Why?
There.
Why?
I don't know. Because I can. Good enough. All right. Have a great week, folks. See you next time.
See ya.